I love a good story. Anybody else love a good story?
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially stories of heroism, like where a hero just truly goes ahead and defeats all odds and just does something valiant and heroic. I love a good story like that. Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Like this one, one of my favorite classic tales of this time of year of a young man who needs to defend his family's riches from being plundered. You know, burglars are poised to take the things that are valuable, most valuable to him and his family, and Kevin has to go ahead and protect his family's riches. If you're unfamiliar with this classic Christmas story, it would be Home Alone. And it is a good one to really get the idea of, you know, what does it look like for a young man to single-handedly guard the inheritance that had been given to him, that was rightfully his, and these burglars are going to try and steal that from him, right? I mean, that's the story, and it's one of biblical proportions, which is why it makes sense to put it into a sermon, because it really is just against all odds, this young man is going to have to fight for it. And for real, though, there's something engaging and enjoyable about watching someone fight for something that they care and they value, isn't there? Yeah? I mean, like, literally, that is a trope of many stories of just anywhere, is that there is something valuable that is at risk of being taken or lost, and somebody needs to fight to make sure that it isn't. Like, you could put that story and find it in, like, all kinds of different places. It shows up a lot because, you know why? It's a good story. Like, it's a good story to be engaging in, to go, man, there's something worthwhile, worth fighting for. And, you know, it's just speaking of worth fighting for, I kind of missed the opportunity a couple weeks ago when we were in an honor series. But I think it's worth giving honor to special people. And this Veterans Day, we weren't able to do it. But we have a veteran in the house who fought. And I just want, Larry, thank you for your service to our country. We honor you and honor the sacrifices that you made and others have made. So let's just give it up for Larry. Thank you. Thank you. There's something really cool about fighting for something that's really worthwhile. And there's much that could be and should be valuable to us in this life. Yes? There's much that could be and should be valuable to us in this life. But isn't joy something that if you had would be especially worth keeping? If you had joy and you already kind of found your way to getting it, it would be something that you would probably want to hold on to and not just give away too quickly. I mean, think of that. A power that allows you to feel good when it'd be very understandable how bad you might possibly feel. Yes? You know, like it actually allows you to have something other than being just miserable. When honestly, let's have church this morning, yes? Being miserable would be very natural. It is almost miraculous that you would not be miserable in the world that we live in. I know I'm being such a joy to the world. Here we go. But yes, like I'll just say this flatly. Those who don't have Jesus, I get why there's just such sorrow and sadness. Because even with Jesus, there's a lot of sorrow and sadness. And this world is just miserable. And joy grants us a miracle of going, I don't need to stay in that. And it's not just that. It's also not just a passing feeling. Like a quick little, like a lightning strike. Oh, did you see that? I had a moment, just for a second, I felt great gladness. You know, like just, it was there and then it's gone again. No, real joy is sustainable. It's one that actually like is long lasting. It really sticks with us. And on top of that, not only is this joy miraculous and it's long lasting and sustainable, it's a deep feeling of good that gets down to like a heart and soul level. Because it's one thing to go ahead and have a moment where you're like, I just kind of emotionally feel, but like deep into our soul and our spirit going, no, there's a deep joy that I have. And it goes down to that deep place where honestly there could be a lot of sorrow and sadness and darkness. The light shines in that. And it's allowing the light of delight to spill in and warm our hearts. Like I think of this time of year, this is what I picture joy like. This time of year when it's really cold and the window is like open and the light shines in and then like just standing right there, you feel that warmth. Yes? We're cat sitting for I think one more day, guys. Those of you who know, that I know it's a personal element. I don't normally add those into my sermons, but one more day and 7 months of sorrow will be gone. But that cat loves this time of year to sit in the sunlight, and I totally get it. Because this cold time of year, that's what I picture joy like. Real joy is that sense of like, oh, amidst all the cold, there's a warmth here. And I want to stick right there, right? Yeah. So this joy that I'm talking about, just so we're clear on what I mean, is I'm talking about the inheritance that we have in our salvation in Jesus. In this sense that we know that, as I just prayed a second ago, that Jesus came to die for our sins in our place, that we didn't deserve any of this. In fact, what we did deserve, God chose not to give us. So it's a good deal, because he's not only not giving us what we don't, he's not only not giving us what we do deserve, right? Yeah. Which if that was it, it'd be like, okay, thank you, God. If he was like, I'm done with you, but I'm not going to destroy you, but I'm done with you, that might be good enough. But instead he goes, I'm not done with you. I want to come in. I want to be among you. I'm going to take on flesh. I'm going to join you. I'm going to show you what I'm like by Jesus being a representation of the Father to us so we can see in flesh what God is like. This is cool. And this joy is that's the joy that I'm talking about, the salvation that we have when we've surrendered to that Jesus. And we've said, you know what, I want to follow him with my life. There's a joy in our salvation. And so I'm kind of presupposing here this morning that you've experienced that joy, but I also know that for some of you, maybe not yet, and my hope would be that there would be an enticement in the sermon today, that you'd go, I think I want what they're talking about. Yeah? And if there is that joy in your salvation, you have that experience, once again, like last week I said, sometimes we need to be reminded of the joy of our salvation. And but if you have that joy, again, just to make sure we're on the same page as we're starting today, that joy would be something worth keeping, right? Would be something that you'd want to protect, right? Yeah. Come on, right? Yeah. Wouldn't be something you want to let go of, let something or someone come in unopposed and just take it. No, get the paint cans ready, prep the BB gun, saw the stairs, the pieces that you need to in half, just almost in half, get the tool chest ready at the top of the stairs. We're going to fight for this thing because it's not getting stolen without a fight. And the reality is there's a fight going on to steal your joy. Jesus himself, the one that we kind of put a lot of value in what he says, hey, just so you know, there is a lot of things up against you. Namely, Satan, he wants to steal, kill, and destroy. At least it's good that we know. But then he says, okay, on top of all that, imagine then, if Jesus said that there was an enemy that's coming to steal, kill, and destroy, how much joy would be one of the top things that he'd want to steal from the store? Joy would absolutely be one of those things. If I can get that, I would really be winning. But Jesus once said in John 15, 9 through 11, as the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. And he's talking to his disciples. Now just remain in my love. If you keep my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commands and remain in his love. Now this last verse is where I want you to really focus in on. So y'all with me here? Yeah. I have said this and told you this, so that my joy may be in you. My what may be in you? My joy may be in you, and that your joy may be complete. Now, I want you to notice some things that are really kind of right on the surface. Jesus wants his disciples to have joy. Some of y'all don't get this. Jesus is a teacher who comes and teaches really harsh realities about God. In fact, just so you know, Jesus talks more about hell than he does about heaven. Jesus goes ahead and says the way is narrow, the road is slim, and many people are going to go ahead and say, Lord, Lord, and pretend like they knew me, and they won't. And Jesus is not necessarily the pale-skinned, cuddly Jesus that we see in some representations. But as much as Jesus is God in the flesh, he's very clear on something. I want you to have joy. Yeah. He wants us to have joy. Isn't that something? And then he also said that he wants that joy to be... Go ahead, was it? Yeah, she said it, okay? Rachel said complete. I have it on the record. She said complete. But he wants your joy to be complete, which would mean your joy could then be incomplete. It could be unfulfilled, not quite there, not quite to the level it's meant to be at. So I'm really convinced that Jesus is telling us, cluing us into something that, like, hey, you might even get some joy, but it might not be complete if you're not doing the thing that he has told us to do. It then might not be everything that it could be. And for some of you in the room, here's my excitement today. This is why it's not the coffee that I had this morning, although I did, don't worry. It is that there are some of you that are going to leave with a more complete joy and a path for more and more and more joy in your life than you had when you came in here. That excites me. Because like I started saying today, I think we could all use a little bit more joy. I think this world doesn't offer it to us. We'll get to that. But anyway, but because it's so important, no wonder that Satan would try to steal it. Because if Satan could disempower God's people like Delilah cutting off Samson's hair by cutting off our joy, then I think he would want to do that. I think he would go for it. And what is one of the things that Satan will use most often to go ahead and steal our joy? I think it's simply this: suffering, sorrow, and difficulty, aka life. Like situations, circumstances, suffering, sorrow, and difficulty. It is not rocket science, y'all. Joyless circumstances don't typically spark joy for us. It tends to stifle it. It tends to steal it naturally. This is where we see the difference between sometimes happiness and joy. And happiness, I would define this way. It's generally feeling happy because things in your life are kind of happy, and you're responding in agreement to that. Yeah. And here's the thing. I don't think that's bad. I think pastors, I've been under a lot of teaching. I grew up in the church, so I've heard a lot of pastors preach about happiness and joy, and it's almost like happiness is like it's the bad one. It's the cheap one. You don't really want happiness, because happiness is just circumstances, and you're kind of responding to your circumstances. But here's the reality, y'all. That's okay to do. I actually don't like being around Christians, and I don't think Jesus does either, who are not happy when they even have circumstances that should make them happy. Yeah. It's like, oh my gosh, you're impossible. I feel like Jesus is probably up there going like, oh, nothing wins with you. Okay, you're just miserable. But the thing is that happiness is a gift of feeling glee when life is good, and that's from God, and it honors God for us to enjoy that. We don't need to give that up in order to go ahead and say that joy is the ability to experience the feeling of elevation even when life's actually trying to pull us down. That joy then is actually the feeling of elation that comes only from Jesus and our understanding of him and his promises. So Satan would likely want to steal that thing. That would keep us through all that. So here's the one thing that I want us to see today, and then we'll dig into it a little bit deeper. But the one thing that I want us to get today is the surest way to not have suffering steal your joy is to ground your joy in the glory of Jesus rather than in ideal conditions. Yeah. I didn't want to wordsmith this one too much and make it too short and poetic. So it's long, but let me just say it again. The surest way to not have suffering steal your joy is to ground your joy in the glory of Jesus rather than in ideal conditions. And I want to talk today in our time together about practically how we can do that. Because suffering is a liability to our joy when our joy comes from experiencing ideal conditions. You know, suddenly things aren't ideal. I never wanted that in my life. Anybody ever been there? I just want to make sure you're all still like paying attention, because I'm like, if anyone's saying, no, I've never had that happen in my life where something came into my life that I didn't want, how did you do it? What's your secret? Because we've all had that. And if that's how our joy is found, is in our ideal circumstances, then our joy will always have that risk of being lost like that. Yeah. But if you look at Jesus, and if you look at his disciples, and if you look at the people that have followed Jesus over the centuries and all that, you see they actually found ways to have joy even in the most not ideal conditions. Like even in the worst situations, they actually found joy even when suffering, because they would cling to it. They would cling to joy. They wouldn't let it go. They found joy even when life was only delivering for them discomfort, disappointment, or maybe even disaster. How did they do it? Here's our first point. They did it by realizing that greater joy is often birthed through a process of pain. This is the one that I'm most excited about. Oh yeah, right? Some of y'all have figured out I like to be sarcastic. Yes, I don't love this, but the joy to the world that we're singing of and we're talking about this season, the joy to the world that came through Jesus' birth wasn't without some pain. I've looked into the study of it. I don't think Mary had an epidural. So there was physical pain. But there was also plenty more pain. If you can join us for our Christmas Eve services, I imagine we'll probably get into the idea that like Mary being a 14-year-old unwed pregnant mom probably brought with it some unique pains as well. Yes? Okay. Let's just go in the ancient Near East. Being a 14-year-old unwed pregnant mom probably produced some emotional, relational pains as well. So physical pain was part of this Christmas story, but also many other kinds. And yet Mary delighted in the Lord and then rejoiced at his birth when she's holding him in her arms. And Jesus later on would teach and kind of explain why that's so possible. He says in John 16:16-24, talking to his disciples near the end of his ministry, he says, "A little while and you will see me no longer." So like, you see, it's the end of his ministry. He's going, I'm gonna leave you guys. And he's warning them. And again, a little while, and then you will see me. And so some of his disciples said to one another, what on earth is he talking about? A little while and you'll not see me, and then again a little while and you will see me, and because I'm going to the Father. So they were saying, what does he mean by a little while? Like, what is he talking about? What does he mean by a little while? We do not know what he's talking about. It's good to admit that sometimes. Jesus knew that they wanted to ask him, so he just said to them, hey, is this what you're asking yourselves? What I meant by saying a little while and you will not see me, and again a little while and you will see me? And he's going to explain it. Truly, truly, I say to you, you're going to weep and you're going to lament, but the world will rejoice. So you're going to be sad and everyone else is going to be going on like it's all fine and happy. You will be sorrowful, but your sorrow will turn into joy. And now he's going to go ahead, like a good preacher that he is, he's going to use a metaphor. He says, when a woman is giving birth, she has sorrow because her hour has come. But when she's delivered the baby, she no longer remembers the anguish for joy that a human being has been born into the world. So also you have sorrow now, but I will see you again, and your hearts will rejoice, and no one will take your joy from you. In that day you will ask nothing of me. Truly, truly, I say to you, in the meantime, whatever you ask of the Father in my name, he will give it to you. Until now you have asked nothing in my name. Ask and you will receive, that your joy may be full. So Jesus, once again, wants us to have joy, and a joy that's full. And he's trying to get them to realize that, you know what, greater joy can oftentimes be birthed through a process of pain. That sometimes the pain you don't want, right, is the process to the joy that you do want. And I don't like it, but it just is. Just like the sorrow of childbirth, as he uses that illustration, is overshadowed by once that baby's in the arms and it's a healthy baby, suddenly who cares about the pain? Oh my gosh, this has overshadowed that. And Jesus is saying it's still true for us today that there are things that will overshadow the pain that we'll go through. In the midst of it and in the moment, it doesn't feel that way. It feels like hell on earth sometimes. But Jesus is saying that pain almost always is a precursor to greater things. And there'd be no victory of Easter as we see in Jesus' life himself, right? The victory of Easter wouldn't happen without the pain of Calvary. And that crushing pain of Calvary. In fact, there's a quote from a book. I meant to bring it with me, but I didn't. But I have the quote here, Leadership Pain by Samuel Chan. He says, sooner or later, the God who has transported us out of the kingdom of darkness into his marvelous light takes us out of the light and into a dark night of the soul. It's part of the way of the cross, to some degree for every believer, but especially for those of us who have been called to lead God's people. We find true spiritual strength when we trust God when we're weak. Similarly, our leadership is far more attractive and authentic when we've been broken and then lead out of humility instead of pride. See, pain then, if this is the reality, pain then doesn't have to be purposeless. Right? It doesn't have to be pointless. We can aim to see that some pain, and you hear what I'm saying, right? Some pain. I'm not trying to say it all is, but some pain absolutely is a process to joy. It's a process to growth and all that. Think of athletes. Athletes know that there is a pain that for them is going to get them to a greater joy. I say they because I'm not one of them, in case you're curious. It's just, you kind of get like crazy. Anybody know anybody who's like highly athletic? There's a craziness to it. Yeah, you're raising your hand because you're one of them. There's a sense of just like, oh, I'll come in at 5:30 a.m. and I'll go into the pool and I'll swim laps and I'll swim laps. And what drives some of us insane actually starts to become enjoyable for them because they've already kind of seen the connection between this pain gets me to this place. And so I'll have to endure it, but I don't get to this place without this pain, so I'm going to go through this. And there's a greater joy. Many of us have different things, different hobbies that we have that for other people would be pain, but we're willing to endure the pain because we believe that the end result is worth it. Jesus is saying, trust me, I'm worth it. This transforms then the pain, the process, and the way we view joy. And so another book that I really enjoy about this idea of joy, The 4-8 Principle by Tommy Newberry, says that joy is an outward sign of inward faith in the promises of God. That joy then is a proactive happiness. It's the learned capacity to display your faith ahead of time by means of your daily mental attitude. So it's that idea, I'm going to choose to go ahead and look at this differently as a part of the process that God has me on, rather than just sitting here and going, this is awful, which is naturally what I would want to do. Okay, point number 2. The second thing that we can do to really grow through pain is keeping connected to Christ, you could just say abiding, helps us experience joy while enduring and being patient. Again, I know it's longer, but the enduring and being patient comes from this verse here. Colossians 1 says, and so from that day we have not ceased to pray for you, Paul says, asking that you may be filled with the knowledge of his will in all spiritual wisdom and understanding, so as to walk in the manner worthy of the Lord, fully pleasing to him. So just to sum it up, Paul's going, I've been praying that you would just really live the life that God has for you that would make him happy, that would please the Lord. Yeah? Bearing fruit. What does that say? Bearing fruit? Yeah. What was that one more time? Bearing fruit. Okay, bearing fruit in every good work and increasing in the knowledge of God, being strengthened with all power according to his glorious might, for all endurance and patience with joy, giving thanks to the Father who has qualified you to share in the inheritance of the saints in light. So here's what I find out. You can actually endure and be patient with joy. Mind-blowing for some of us, isn't it? Yeah. Wow. You can endure. And here's the thing. This is a big deal, I think, because the conditions that drive you and I to needing to even possibly consider enduring or being patient, the conditions that cause you and I to endure or be patient, are they conditions that naturally spark joy? No. If you have to endure, if you have to be patient, it is not in a joyful circumstance in and of itself. It is an endurable, a hard-to-endure situation, one that causes you to be patient. So pain, I've found, is inevitable, but misery is optional. So I'm looking at the situation and I'm going, all right, a key determining factor here of whether I find this situation and this condition to be an absolute misery, or if I can endure it and be patient, but not just enduring but patient, but enduring it and being patient with joy is what I'm connected to. That's the key factor here. Because I had you guys repeat it, so I wanted to make sure that we all caught it. He says that we're all meant to bear fruit, right? Yeah. Bearing fruit. Yeah. It's a gardening metaphor. Yes! I love my gardening metaphors. The verse that we read at the beginning of this sermon was from John 15, and that's when Jesus is talking about this idea of abiding in him. And he's getting this concept of like, hey, if you abide in me, if you stay connected to me, there are things that come through that. And so right now, I have plants that look like they're dead. A lot of them, actually. And it's scary for me. I still just freak out about it because I'm just like, oh no. But the reality is that many of the plants that I have right now that look dead, they're not. It's just winter. And this is a season of dormancy where it looks like nothing is happening. It looks like everything is lost. It looks like there's just death and decay and no good around and everything is miserable and sorrowful. But the reality is for many of these plants, they're totally healthy. They're totally fine. And you know why? Because they're still connected to the root. Yeah. And the root's still doing its thing, and these are perennial plants, and so they're still doing their thing. Everything is fine. Anybody else get freaked out about your plants sometimes? Kind of like, oh no, it's all, yeah, everything's fine. I don't need to freak out or anything like that. I just need to wait. And in fact, you know what I found? Is that sometimes that period of dormancy for many plants is actually critical to its future health and prosperity. It kind of needs that season of off in order to come back on in a more healthy and real way. And I think it's easy for us to have a sense of joy when there's not pain, when it's all summery and sunshine. But if pain eliminates the possibility for joy, but pain can be required for growth and maturity, yes? Then you and I need to either decide, do I want an easy, painless life that will not mature me at all? Or do I want to go ahead and have a pain-filled life that I go ahead and I get into it, but I'm miserable the whole time? Because if pain and joy are mutually exclusive, you've got to choose one of those two ones. Choose the joy that comes with no growth and maturity, or choose to grow in the Lord and be mature and be miserable the whole time. Which one's going to be? A or B? Neither of them sounds great to me, but I'll choose A too. Yeah, I'll choose A too. But it really is cool that our joy actually brings glory to God. Yeah. And in connection to Jesus, the pain actually can cause us to pull into deeper depths. Our roots go down lower. Because all of a sudden in that moment of pain, you're going, oh my gosh, I really need Jesus then. Yeah. Like I cannot do this because my circumstances aren't feeding what I need in my soul. I certainly need Jesus. And in those moments of pain, it can purify our motives and our hearts. because we can start to realize some of the things that maybe wouldn't be obvious to us otherwise. It can keep us humble. Yeah? Oh, come on. Who doesn't like those? I don't pray about it. I do not ask the Lord for humility. I know he's going to give it to me anyway, so I don't need to ask him for it. It's like the same as patience. I don't want to pray for patience because I know what happens. He gives you moments then to be patient. Yeah, that's going to happen anyway. Anyway, I ask him for strength. But anyway, in those moments where sorrow and sadness are deep and heavy, it can, if we're healthy, if we're in a place, it'll cause us to pray more. Because we'll cry out to God and we'll go, I just need your help. And so that's why I'll encourage you really practically. Like I said, I like to be really practical. The next time that life sucks, like is sucking the life out of you, the circumstances that you're going through are just draining you, pray and pursue God. And here's what I would encourage you. Hopefully, again, today can be a kind of propelling forward. Hopefully, you're not pursuing God and praying for the first time in many, many weeks. Like that catch-up call. Hey, it's been a while. Because the health and the strength comes from staying regularly connected. But even still, if it's been a while, he still wants to hear from you. But lean in with faith and ask God for the joy that he told you he wants you to have. Yeah. In that moment, ask him and say, God, my circumstances aren't delivering. So I'm going to need you to bring me some joy. Jesus, I need you to meet me here. Because here's what when we talk about the things that bring us joy, and I know we can use that word flippantly, but like some of us, like gardening brings me joy, yeah? If I told you that like I don't ever go out to my garden, I don't ever see it, I don't ever touch anything that's like gardening related, I just kind of keep it at an arm's length and all that, it'd be confusing that it would bring me joy. Because here's the thing, ready? We can't get joy from things that we're not connected to. So if you're not connected to Jesus, it's going to be hard for you to get joy from him. So we can't get joy from things we're not connected to. So if you want to go ahead and get joy from Jesus, you better be connected. It's just that idea of like, again, I'm not trying to be mean, but I just think sometimes we're like, well, I'm just going through a joyless situation and Jesus isn't helping. It's like you've not been connected to him. And I'm not trying to shift blame. I'm just saying you cannot get joy from something that you're not connected to. Connect in deeper. Let the roots go low. And trust me, again, I've had plants die on me. It doesn't just overnight. You got to take care of that. That's why Jesus told his disciples in John 15, it was one of the last teaching moments he had with them. He's going, guys, stay connected, abide in me. Because he knew how important it was. And that's why it's good that we have our joy grounded in the glory of Jesus and not in our circumstances, because our circumstances are changing. Our circumstances and things in our life are going away. It's the way life is. And they're temporary. Pretty much everything. But Jesus is not going anywhere. He's not temporary. He's not changing. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. So that's a much better thing for us to have our praise and our glory and our joy in. See, when you think of like Paul and Silas, there's a story in Acts where these two guys, Paul and Silas, are in prison and they're singing praises. And here's the thing. It wasn't because they started singing because the food was so good in prison. And it wasn't because they got to enjoy this king-sized stone floor to sleep on. It wasn't that. And it probably wasn't even those of you musical people. It probably wasn't even that they were singing praises just because the acoustics in that prison cell were so good. Which they might have been. They might have been. But it probably wasn't because of that they started singing praises to Jesus. It was probably because they were already connected to Jesus. And they wanted to cling even more intentionally to that connection to Jesus in that moment. Because they knew he was their source of joy. And they knew they needed joy. Yeah. Right? So Scripture shows us that life can involve a lot of unenjoyable and yet not keep God's people from having joy. Amen. And here's the third thing I want to talk about as we end today. Clinging to a vision that's bigger than the struggle. That's going to be one of the clinching things that's going to help us to have a joy regardless of our circumstances. Now, Hebrews is where we get this one from. Hebrews 12, 1 through 2 says, therefore, since we're surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, and basically the author's saying, since we got so many people that have gone before us, the chapter before this is a list of spiritual giants in the Bible. And the author's going, since we're kind of like, we're in a really good group here. We've got a lot of clout. Our history, our spiritual lineage is really rich. So since these people are like before us, watching over us and all that, well, let us also then lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with endurance the race that is, help me out with those next three words. I'm going to cue you up again here. With endurance, the race that is Looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that was him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is seated at the right hand of the throne of God. We endure the race that is set before us because Jesus endured the cross that was set before him. We endure with joy because Jesus endured with joy. Jesus, and the reason that Jesus endured with joy, part of it at least, is Jesus had a vision for what was beyond the struggle instead of getting lost in it. Sometimes we need to let suffering be a window rather than a wall. That we look through it and we see beyond it and we trust with eyes of faith, because that's what faith is seeing things that we can't actually see. We just trust God that this wall isn't eternal. And that's just, we did a series again last year, Good Grief. If you're new to Alive, go back and watch them, because I understand this season can be one that grief is real. And I'm not trying to say it's not. I'm just saying, especially in this series, there can be a sense of, if I looked at this wall is eternal. There's no getting around it, getting over it. And y'all would be like, Jonathan, there's literally 2 doors. Like there's 2 exit doors. You can get around that. But in the moment, we need to sometimes look at our life and pray, God, give me eyes to see beyond this pain that's in front of me. Because think of it. Mary was given the vision for bearing the Son of God into this world, and she clung to it. And so she endured to the moment of holding him in her arms. And so we'll sing the song, Mary, Did You Know? Yes, she did. And that's why she did it. Because she knew that there was purpose in it. She knew that she was full of faith and full of joy that God had given her a vision for what was going to be on the other side of this. There's a verse in the Bible that sometimes gets misinterpreted. It says about, like, without vision, the people perish. And the reason it's out of context is because it's not really talking about vision the way we look at it in 2022, where it's like, what's your vision statement and things like that. The idea of this, though, is still valuable. That without a clear sense of where you're going, there's going to be some perishing. There's going to be some things that die if you're not clear on where you're going and what's before you. We need to have that sense of our eyes are set on the things that are set before us. And here's the thing. At the end of the day, Paul, in one of his letters, he says, you know what? The thing that's ultimately set before us that brings us joy is the fact that this earth, as much as we're meant to pray that God would send his kingdom to earth as it is already in heaven, this earth is still going to suck. And it's not going to be everything. And it's really good for us to realize that as much as we can and should, I believe, make the most of this moment. Paul says, if this is all we have, this here now, then the Jesus thing doesn't even make sense. Doesn't even make sense to follow him. That's Paul saying it. Yeah. But he's saying the reason that I can say that is because Jesus is real, heaven is real, and because of that, there is a joy that I can see ahead of me that allows me to endure whatever in front of me. And I can suffer. And he even says the suffering is not even worth comparing, honestly. And so C.S. Lewis would then say that all joy emphasizes our pilgrim status. He says it always reminds, beckons, awakens desire. And then he ends the quote with saying, our best havings are wantings. Our best havings are wantings. What I think he's saying there is like, the things that we have, those moments. Have you ever had a moment that, again, I know we're kind of happiness and joy, but have you ever had a moment where it just feels like, if I could just pause life right here, this would be a sweet place to pause and just stay. Yeah. Yes? Yeah. Our best havings are wantings. We want that to stay forever. There's something intrinsically inside of us that goes, that would be really great. I want that. And I think the reason that we want that is because God designed us for that. Yeah. God designed us for a sense that we'll go ahead and we will look forward to a day where all sadness and sorrow are eternally gone. Yeah. Where we're not just kind of praying to Jesus with eyes of faith, we're looking at him face to face. Where any sickness, any illness, any kind of ailment, physical disabilities, gone. Just done. Not that you wake up tomorrow hoping it's a better day. Gone. And so, in this life right now, we are not there. Yeah? And I want to just encourage you as we kind of end today, that Paul in Philippians, we in our life group on Wednesday nights, we've been going through Philippians, and it just strikes me every time I read Philippians, when we get to Philippians 4:8, and Paul's enduring so much. He's in prison when he writes that letter, and he says in Philippians 4:8, think about these things, whatever is true, noble, lovely, admirable, all these like lists of things. And he's saying, I want you to think on these things. I want you to dwell on these things. And the reason he says that, I believe, is because dwelling on our difficulties doesn't actually fix them. It just fixates our hearts and minds on them. I'll say it again. Dwelling on our sorrows and our difficulty and our pain doesn't often actually fix them. It just fixates our hearts and minds on them. And so what would be good for us, Paul's saying, is in these moments, and again, in that context, he's kind of talking about an issue with people in the church. So there's difficulties in the church. There's difficulties in their lives. Paul's in prison. He's kind of dealing with some difficult circumstances. And he's going, you know what? Even still, no matter what, here's the key to joy, because that's what Philippians is a lot about. Whatever is true. Think about that. Whatever is noble, admirable, honorable. Think about that. Whatever is praiseworthy, if anything's excellent, think about that. Dwell on that, because he's saying, I want you to go ahead and run in the path that Jesus has for you, the one that he's set before you. And if we'll do that, and if we'll stay connected to Jesus as the source of our joy in endurance and in patience, if we'll realize that pain is often a part of the process of greater joy coming, and if we'll have a vision for joy that God has set before us, then our joy will be in Jesus, and our joy will be complete. And then it won't be stolen from us, because we'll have protected it. We'll have guarded it. We'll have said, you know what? I'm going to cling to this. In fact, Madeline, can you come up here for the end of this? We're called to contend for the faith. She has no idea, by the way, what the illustration is that she's about to be a part of. You can leave the laptop. It's okay. Just hand it to John. You need your hands free for this. Yeah. We're called to contend for the faith. Yeah? That's kind of a thing. Which I don't think always means fighting for others or fighting against others. Like, I think there's moments where it sometimes needs to be like, hey, what you're saying isn't true, and I want to contend for what is true, and I want to kind of... I think contending for the faith, though, also means contending for my own faith and trust in Jesus. Fighting that I wouldn't lose that. Fighting for each other in the church community that would say, hey, I know how easy it's going to be for you to lose your faith. I want to contend that you wouldn't lose it. Yes? Yes. And what is such a great robber of our faith? When our joy has already been stolen. Because when our joy in the Lord is stolen, which, by the way, Nehemiah said the joy of the Lord is our strength. When our strength is stolen, just like Samson with no hair, it's pretty easy for anything to come in and take us. And when your joy in the Lord is gone, it's going to be easy for your faith to be gone. So I want us to be clinging. I want us to be clinging. Because fortunately, Madeline did try to get away from me right now. She's tough. She's strong. She could scratch. But I'm holding on. And so anywhere, she's pretty tough, yeah. But I got her, and I'm holding on to her. And some of y'all, you know about the bad and unhealthy clingy because you dated back in the day, So you know about unhealthy clingy. But I think for some of us, it's really important that we recognize that, if my circumstances are the dictator of my joy, if I just need to make sure I'm in that exact spot for me to have joy, much of my life is lived outside of that spot. And so much of my life then doesn't go ahead and naturally have joy. And joy, like we talked about last week, is something that Jesus is worthy of. And something that we choose. So I'm just going to go ahead and take this one with me. And I'm going to go ahead and bring it over into this sorrowful circumstance right here. And I'm going to go ahead and in this moment of, oh my gosh, things are actually pretty nice. Like, this is really great. I'm going to have it here, but I'm also going to have it over here, where it's a new kind of unfortunate. Yeah. And thank you. And I want that for you. So what is it right now that in your life maybe needs to be stirred up for you to realize that, you know what? Jesus is worthy of your joy. He's worthy of that. Joy is something that's so valuable that you and we need to contend for it. We need to fight for it. We need to be a little bit intentional about how we're going to make sure that it doesn't just get stolen. Is your joy in Jesus? Or is it more in circumstance? What does it look like for it to be founded in Jesus? I want to challenge you. If maybe today there's the first thing of like there's not a relationship with Jesus, then that has to be the first thing. Because there's just nothing like the joy that says, that whole Christmas story that, again, we can make so clean and cute and cuddly. And it really is it's a real story of God's love that he was willing to show in a really messy way. Being born into a stable with a bunch of animals doesn't sound like a pretty thing to me. And so anyway, those stories of that and of Easter and all that was for you. That was God's love for you. You accepting it is a really smart, really, I think, reasonable response. It's kind when somebody does something so loving to go ahead and respond and say, I appreciate that. And Jesus doesn't say, okay, I just want you to believe it. He goes, I want you to follow me. So there is a sacrifice of us going, oh, I'll believe that, and then I'll go live my life the way I want to. Jesus is constantly calling his people to say, hey, believe and let me change you. Abide in me. Let me be the one who leads you in the paths of life. And again, the cool thing is the paths of life that Jesus has for you are ones of joy. He doesn't want you to be miserable. But he also knows that in this world you're going to have trouble. So what does it look like for us to cling to Jesus? Let's pray. Jesus, we need your help if we're going to get through some of the things that we're maybe even currently going through and still have joy. God, some of us this year, maybe there have been things that have been circumstances, sorrows, suffering, that in and of themselves absolutely do not spark joy for us. And so we might sing songs of joy to the world and feel like there's a heaviness and a weightiness because there's not naturally a sense of joy in our lives because there's so much sorrow. But Jesus, you're not unaware of the sorrow of this life. You know it full well. You came in suffering. You endured a lot of suffering, both like physically, but also before that, even betrayal, abandonment, people judging you, and all kinds of nastiness. Jesus, you're not unaware of the suffering. And yet you said, I want my disciples to have joy and have it be complete. Jesus, would you give us a clinginess to the joy that you offer us so that we would have a new sense as we go into this next year, as we look at even ourselves right now and the world around us, that we'd sense your joy elevating our hearts and our spirits. Jesus, would you meet us in our sorrow and bring us new joy? Would you give us the joy of the Lord that is our strength, that we will not be weak when life is just demanding so much of us. Jesus, you are our strength. May we cling to you, abide in you, and find you to be more than enough. And all God's people agreed and said, amen.